What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Ben Thomas Show. Thanks for coming back. Today, I'm excited. We have another pre-order window opening for EXO-6, and it's a Star Trek character that I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with, but he's from the Andorian race. He's a commander, and he's featured, I would say, most specifically in Star Trek Enterprise. So today, I'm going to give you guys a very brief rundown on the Andorians as a species, who this character is and why he's important to the Federation and the overall Star Trek universe, as well as looking at the EXO-6 1/6 scale figure. But if you guys like this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, or if you're new to the channel, and let's get into it. Andorians, originating on the moon of Andoria, orbiting the planet Andor. Andorians are known for a few key characteristics, one being their blue skin, typically their white hair, as well as the antenna on top of their heads. Now, Andorians are quite emotional. They're family-oriented. They're also very militaristic. Andorians also had a proud warrior culture, which required them to honor their debts, sometimes to the point of needing or requiring a duel to the death. Which is a little dramatic when you think about it, but kind of cool. They considered service in the Imperial Guard as the highest honor, and their military rank often determined their social status. And fun fact, Andorians actually see male and female as being equal, which is a breath of fresh air, but also in a way that meant that when Andorian females looked to attract male suitors, they would actually assault them, which is interesting, and commonly meant that their marriages consisted of 4 members, not 2. Now, pertaining to fighting, Andorians also have a really high metabolic rate, so it means that they're aggressive, but they tire really easily. So oftentimes, when faced with battle, as long as you outlast an Andorian, there's a good chance they're going to tire quickly and lose the fight. Now, why do Andorians matter to Star Trek? Specifically, this character that we're seeing from EXO-6. Commander Shran was in charge of leading the ship, the Kumari, after intel provided the Andorians some insight into the Vulcan High Command potentially spying on them, even after Vulcans and Andorians had had a relatively peaceful first contact. They'd been able to live relatively mutually, but there was some antitrust there, and finding out that maybe Vulcans were, in a militaristic way, spying on the Andorians, this created some serious waves. But despite the waves, every time they went looking for this secret device, potentially located in this monastery on Pajem, nobody could find it. So when this particular EXO-6 character, Commander Shran, went to Pajem, he actually takes the monks hostage. Now, this is right around the time in the 21st century where Captain Archer from the Star Trek Enterprise, or the television show Enterprise, gets involved. And this is where Captain Archer actually ends up meeting this particular Andorian character for the first time. Now, even though Captain Archer in this episode is actually taken hostage, just like the monks in this monastery, we actually see that this Andorian and Archer find a little bit of common ground, especially after they actually find this spying device in the monastery. And because Archer helps this Andorian commander find this, it creates a level of trust between both the representatives of Earth, because they're not technically the Federation yet at that point, and the Andorian species. Now, despite some of this deception with the Vulcans, even though Captain Archer from Enterprise didn't appreciate this deception and provided some of this information to the Andorians, it did create some waves with the Vulcan High Command for a period of time. However, after a bit of a stalemate and fighting for a period of time in the year 2152, essentially, in Star Trek, we do see that a Vulcan High Commander by the name of Saval and Shran do decide to get together and create some peace talks. However, because the Andorians and the Vulcans have never really got along up to this point all that well, they required a mediator. So this particular EXO-6 character, this Commander Shran, reaches out to Captain Jonathan Archer and asks him to come and mediate this peace talk. Now, between 2154 and 2161 of Star Trek history, we do see still some war with Romulans, but after some critical defeats of the Romulans in the Romulan Empire, we finally get a chance to see that these four species, most specifically, again, the Tellurites, the Andorians, the humans, and the Vulcans, finally start seeing the benefit of working together, and they form the United Federation of Planets, which becomes essentially the base point or the jumping off point for Star Trek and the Federation and everything we know in terms of the Kirk era and the Next Generation era, and so on. Now, a quick couple of highlights before we get into the EXO-6 figure. Andorians, they have their antenna at the front of their foreheads. These antennae help with them in their environment. Because they're coming from a frozen moon, their antenna helps them to detect vibration, but also temperature changes in their atmosphere. So, makes them really hard to sneak up on because they can kind of detect the temperature of a human body or an alien body approaching, but also on a planet, or I should say a moon, that's frozen. If you're looking for food, because there are still thriving animals that they actually eat on their planet, they can detect those life forms, which is cool. Now, the antenna also can be severed. There are a few instances where they are, but these antennae also help with their balance. So they do regenerate, typically up to 6 months, faster if they're assisted with technology. However, they lose their balance. So once an antenna is actually cut off, it will come back, but it really reduces their ability to be effective in combat or tracking for food, which in their particular culture is kind of looked down upon, to be honest. But the cool thing about the antenna, in my opinion at least, is it's just kind of indicative of the moon that they've lived on has kind of shaped their evolution. If it wasn't for their antenna, they wouldn't be able to necessarily survive. In the shows themselves, the antennae are also used to kind of display a level of emotion, which is kind of cool when you think about it, and it also just makes them look like Star Trek aliens when you think about it. They also have blue blood, which is which is very different than any of the other species that we've had a chance to see in Star Trek, at least as far as I'm aware. Now, moving on to the EXO-6 figure, I think that they've done an incredible job with the likeness. It seems to me that EXO-6 is banging out of the park their alien figures. They did with Commander Saru, now with Thy'lek Shran. I think it looks fantastic. The blue skin coloration is really good. One thing that I was curious about was, are the wrist pegs going to match the hands and the arms? Because I did notice that on some of the other EXO-6 figures so far, they actually haven't colored those wrist pegs. Whereas with this guy, I'm happy to report that based at least on the photos, it does look like he has blue wrist pegs. So it won't be as noticeable of an ugly separation in the wrists to the arms as some of the other characters we've seen so far, which bravo EXO-6, I really appreciate that. Please get the message though, have a few extra wrist pegs in the box, because blue wrist pegs that are this color are going to be impossible to replace in the future. So please, crossed fingers, put those in the box for this release. The tailoring on the outfit I also think looks really, really good. I like the material choices that they've used. Now, the leathery, pleathery material, obviously in terms of longevity of the 6 scale figure in your collection, I'm a little bit nervous about, but it is screen accurate. So I'll give it that. Cross your fingers that EXO-6 is using a decent quality material that will last the test of time. Try and keep it in a low humidity environment if at all possible. In terms of equipment and accessories, he does come with the Andorian plasma rifle. Now, that's the larger ground firearm used by the Imperial Guard. He also comes with the Andoria plasma pistol, which is a single-handed firearm that fits in the holster on the thigh. And because I've mentioned already earlier that he comes from an icy planet where miners use deadly looking ice picks essentially, he comes with 2 of those, a duel of honor, and they're called the Ushan Tor. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. As well as Ushan gauntlets, which are worn in the Ushan. These are armored gauntlets that bind the dueling opponents together through a connected hand to wrist armor. And lastly, he comes with his Andorian communicator. The figure is coming in at a slightly higher price than what we've seen now recently with Chakotay, at the price of $210 plus $25 flat rate shipping. Estimated delivery for this figure is March of 2023. EXO-6 has been pretty good with their release windows so far, so I'm hoping for that. It does say through the EXO-6 website specifically the pre-order will end on November the 17th. So mark that in your calendars if you're considering this figure buying directly from the source. However, I have seen that EXO-6 figures have been available through Sideshow and some other means, so something to consider there. For this release, I do think the cost is justifying the purchase. This is a very unique looking character. This is not something that they're going to be able to just reuse easily in other Star Trek characters. It is very specific to this particular species and character in the show. The likeness on the head sculpt I think is really, really good, and he's coming with all different molded weapons, something that not every Star Trek character is going to have with them. These accessories are specific to the Andorian race, and so if we never see another Andorian again, they've had to still pay for those molds. And so I think $210 is a justifiable price. And I will give you a bravo EXO-6. You're still keeping the EXO-6 cost low while putting a very unique character in Star Trek collectors' collections. I also really like that they've given us Captain Jonathan Archer first, because if you have Archer in your collection and now you want to get Commander Shran in your collection as well, really that's 2 of the 4 pillars of the Federation in your Star Trek collection. And I gotta say, this character feels like a little bit of a deep cut to me. I can't imagine that even if another Star Trek licensee gets it at some point, that we'll necessarily see this particular character, despite his impact in the overall Star Trek universe. He's just a deep dive. I don't think we'll see this guy from another company again. So not to create FOMO, but if you are an Andorian fan, if you love the history of Star Trek, if you love having the history of the Federation represented in your collection in 1/6 scale, yeah, you know what? I gotta say, this is a buy, honestly. This is a buy. This isn't a wait for a sale. I do think that this is a good option. Now, if you don't care about Andorians, you probably haven't even made it to this point in the video. Will I be getting this guy in my collection? Tough to say, honestly. At this point, no. I'm going to still try and hold out most specifically for Star Trek The Next Generation characters that have more of a resounding impact for my level of nostalgia for Star Trek. While I see this character as being really important in the Star Trek universe, it's going a little deeper in the collection than I would want to necessarily go. But I'm not a completionist collector like some of you out there, and I definitely see why this is an exciting release for Star Trek fans around the world. If I had one nitpick, it's that we didn't get a chance to see any blogger pictures really truly before the pre-order window opened today. If EXO-6 is looking for some community support, if they want to build hype on some figures, let us see a few more pictures than just the singular picture the day before the release window opens, especially because the release window is relatively small. Some of the 6 scale influencers that are out there who talk about 6 scale and Star Trek specifically, if it's a figure we're excited about, we'll hype it up. So give us a chance to do so, because now I'm hoping that if anybody is kind of a fence sitter or they don't know enough about Andorians, that they get a chance to maybe see this video or other Andorian educational videos to see why this character is cool and why you should consider buying it. But that's a very small nitpick, and maybe only because I'm seeing the benefit to what that would have for the community, not even necessarily the company. Maybe they did it this way for a reason, I don't know. But I will say EXO-6 has been delivering some very unique characters, and if they're willing to go deep dive into a race like the Andorians, wow, am I excited to see what could come with the future. I've seen that Nanjin, the developer, has said he may only have 3 years in the game, so I hope it's the best frickin' 3 years of Star Trek figures we have ever seen, so we can celebrate together as a Star Trek loving community and as a major win for our 6 scale collections. If you guys like this video, hit the like button below. Make sure you leave me a comment. I love talking to you guys about Star Trek in the comments. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys on the next Star Trek EXO-6 preview video. Thanks for watching.